Hello, my name is Aiden Deitch. I'm a junior in civil engineering, and today, along with my group, we are going to be presenting about the Exxon Valdez oil spill. So, first, I'm just going to start off with some background over the Valdez, and then I'm going to go more into the causes of what caused the spill. So, some background on the ship: it was a 987-foot long oil tanker, and it entered service in 1986. So, it was one of the largest oil tankers when it went into service, and its life mainly consisted of transporting crude oil from Alaska down to the west coast to oil refineries. So now that that kind of general background's out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and go into the causes of what caused the spill. So what caused the spill? So the spill was actually a result of several factors that all combined to allow for this catastrophe to happen. The first factor was the fact that they were going through Prince William Sound, Alaska, which is a notoriously dangerous shipping channel. They have reefs and very shallow water on both sides. So the fact that this was a pretty narrow, dangerous shipping channel meant that the margin of error was pretty small. This was combined with the fact that the captain of the ship, Joseph Hazelwood, was actually drinking the night of the shipwreck on March 24th, 1989. He gave control of the ship to a third mate who wasn't at all licensed to steer the ship, and he didn't know how to steer the ship. So as a result, this combined with the fact that the ship's radar wasn't functioning properly, and the ship steered out of its shipping course. And then when this happened, the ship ran aground on a reef, and then it leaked over 10 million gallons of oil into the sound. And this wasn't like a slow spill either. This was pretty much all the 10 million gallons were coming out very quickly, which made it extremely difficult to contain. So like I said, the ship's radar wasn't actually functioning properly. And then investigations after the wreck showed that the ship's radar wasn't functioning properly for over a year before this wreck. So in some ways, this wreck was kind of long overdue. And then another factor was the fact that the ship didn't actually have proper iceberg avoidance systems, which also could be said to be a contributor. So now I'm going to pass it on to Lauren, and she's going to go more into the cleanup efforts and then the impact that this ship spill had on the Prince William Sound, Alaska area and Valdez, Alaska area.
Hi, my name is Lauren Kinchla, and I'm a senior studying civil engineering at UW-Madison. I'll be speaking on the cleanup efforts and lasting impact of the Exxon Valdez oil spill. So immediately following the spill, Exxon and the pipeline company Alyeska were put in charge of the cleanup and promised a 6-hour recovery. However, after almost 24 hours, there was no equipment on the site, as much of it had been snowed in or placed into storage. There was an initial chemical cleanup funded by a private company to dump chemicals to break down the oil. However, they dumped off target and ended up doing more harm to the cleanup workers than help. Then following this, the mechanical cleanup did start with small skimmers and boomers that were available. However, the thick oil clogged the pipes and larger equipment had to be flown in from as far as Texas and England. Because of the delay in the cleanup, much of the oil had already settled on over 800 miles of shoreline, and high pressure water cleanup had to be used, which just further disrupted the natural ecosystem and harmed plankton, which were helping to facilitate the breakdown of the oil. And due to all this setbacks, only 15% of the oil was actually recovered from the spill. So, due to the faulty cleanup efforts and the fact that only a small percentage of the oil was actually recovered, there was a massive collapse of the local marine populations, and the salmon and herring populations are still recovering to this day, as hundreds of thousands of animals died from the oil spill. There's also a widespread illness of the cleanup workers, which can be blamed on the questionable chemicals used in the cleanup. Exxon ended up paying about $5 billion for the cleanup and in lawsuit costs for the cleanup workers and the local economy. As a lasting impact, the Oil Spill Recovery Institute was created by the government to oversee all future oil spill recovery efforts and make sure that nothing like this ever happened again, where there was just no plan in place at all. So now I'm going to pass it on to my other team members, and they're going to analyze the risk and the ethics behind this oil spill. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alex McDonald, and I will be discussing the implications of ignoring the lessons learned. So first off, to begin with some of the social implications, the United States enacted the Oil Pollution Act of 1990 following the oil spill. This had ethical considerations such that it prohibits any oil tanker that had spilled larger than $1 million worth of oil from entering Prince William Sound. And secondly, it also made sure that these oil tankers would now have a double hull design. To discuss the financial implications of this, the University of Northwestern faculty members did a study to understand the benefit of the decreased oil spillage compared to the cost of the increased construction costs on these double hull tankers. They actually found that only around 20% of the cost was recuperated through the benefit. And so what this means is that if these oil companies actually don't take into consideration these double hull tanker design and choose to forego this type of design, they'll actually be having a larger financial gain. To put this into perspective, with the Exxon Valdez oil spill, there was around $1 billion in cleanup charges, $1 billion in civil charges, and around $0.5 billion in punitive charges. The study concluded that in this case, the benefit reaped would only be around 50% of the costs. On the other hand, there were other communities that suffered as a result of the spill financially. One main group was the commercial fishing industry in Prince William Sound. Had the measures of the 1994 Restoration Act not been put in place for these environments, we would still see a lack of sockeye and pink-eyed salmon in the area. These have actually recovered today. However, we are seeing that their population of Pacific herring has still not quite met the population that it was at prior to the spill. So had these restoration methods not been put in place, we would run the risk of never recovering these fish populations in Prince William Sound. And lastly, I'd like to discuss the environmental effects and risk had we not followed the lessons learned from the spill. So the NOAA came out after the spill and actually highlighted how, while this was a tragic event, we learned how to better respond to oil spillage in complex environments. One method that we used in the Exxon Valdez oil spill was using high pressure hot washing of shorelines. And what this does is it really efficiently removes the oil spillage, but actually has a negative impact on the local biodiversity. In the case of Prince William Sound, Eleanor Island actually saw a large decrease in the amount of species and animals that were normally living on the island because of the decrease in silty grain sand as a result of the high pressure hot washing. So this just allows us to realize that if we don't determine wiser methods in the future, we run the risk of even further reducing our biodiversity. Thank you.
My name is Devin Welch, and I'm a fifth-year geological engineering student here at UW-Madison. My team and I have been researching the Exxon Valdez oil spill, which occurred in 1989. I personally will be going over the ethical decisions that led to this disaster and how they could have been avoided. To start off, one of the first choices/decisions that were made, which turned out to be detrimental, was that the Exxon Valdez oil tanker took a route that was not actually authorized or prescribed as part of the normal shipping route. This decision was made to avoid small icebergs and obstacles that were thought to be in the area. At the same time, the oil industry promised to have state-of-the-art iceberg monitoring equipment on the tanker, yet this equipment was never installed. There was also a radar on the ship that was broken for over a year. However, this repair was never made to the tanker and was most likely due to financial reasons. Captain Joseph Hazelwood, the captain of the ship at the time, was also not manning the ship during the crash. It was actually his third mate who was manning the ship. It was also said that Captain Hazelwood was under the influence and was drinking during the time of the crash as to why he was not manning the ship. His third mate was in control of the ship and was reported to be sleep deprived and overworked. This was probably one of the reasons why the ship crashed into Bligh Reef and spilled about 10.8 million gallons of crude oil into William Prince Sound. Who is responsible for the Exxon Valdez oil spill? ExxonMobil actually blamed Captain Joseph Hazelwood for this spill. This is because, after all, he was the captain of the ship and should have been manning the ship at all times. Additionally, to further validate their argument, it was reported that he was drunk and intoxicated or just drinking during the time of the crash. His name was actually cleared years later when new reports and witnesses actually said that he was sober during the time of the crash and was not drinking. Captain Hazelwood then said that ExxonMobil used him as a scapegoat. So can you actually say ExxonMobil was responsible for the crash? After all, there was supposed to be state-of-the-art iceberg monitoring equipment that was never installed on the ship, and there was a radar that was broken for over a year that Exxon management knew about and never fixed. Most likely because it was too expensive and too much of a financial burden to operate. Or could you say the third mate was responsible? After all, he was the one manning the ship and could have made better decisions on the routes he took. Or could you say that the Coast Guard was responsible? The Coast Guard was supposed to perform vessel inspections of the Valdez ship, but never got to do that. And for this reason, the number of staff was reduced on the ship, which made the current staff become very overworked and sleep deprived, which is why it was reported that the third mate was sleep deprived as he was manning the ship. I think the main thing that can come from analyzing this accident is that you can't point the finger at one person. There were various different parties that were involved in this accident, and there were various different decisions that could have been made by these parties to have avoided this spill. Personally, I believe that ExxonMobil was responsible for this. As they are the big business with the financial resources, they could have installed the state-of-the-art equipment and the radar, which could have allowed for a better chance of avoiding these obstacles. However, since they didn't, the third mate, who was most likely undertrained and sleep deprived and not ready to operate a tanker, had crashed into Bligh Reef and spilled so many gallons of oil.
My name is Zach Keller. I am a student here at UW-Madison studying civil engineering, and today I'm here to conclude the Exxon Valdez oil spill. As Devin mentioned before, there were 5 common problems that Exxon had that caused this spill, including the radar detection system that they had was not fully functioning and they did not fix it as they promised to. The first mate did not have enough experience to correctly pilot the ship along with the other crew members, and additionally the first mate was intoxicated when he should have been ready to assume the post. Additionally, they left common shipping lanes to avoid ice, which further put them at risk of crashing. And additionally, they did not have enough crew members on the ship to deal with any problems that might come up. Also why our team thinks that Exxon should be held liable. Aside from the 5 factors that they could have fixed to prevent this spill, they also tried to put the blame on Alaska and the Coast Guard for them apparently not allowing them to release these chemical dispersants quick enough, even though Alaska and the Coast Guard had previous agreements with Exxon and other similar companies to release these in case of a spill such as this size. They also argued that Exxon was not ready to deal with a spill of this magnitude and did not have enough of the chemicals that they would need.